Let us begin with whether it is over this time for Boris Johnson. Now, as everyone knows, PMQs, rather inconveniently for me, was taking place literally 1 hour before we went live on this podcast. So everything I've prepared might seem somewhat belated, somewhat behind, but we will get to the update at PMQs nonetheless later on. But anyway, we've known for a while that whilst we were all confined to lives in lockdown the Christmas before last, which led to many of us, myself included, spending time away from family at Christmas for the first time in our lives, our elected government were partying hard and laughing at our expense, or so it seems. To be honest, they've been laughing at us all along, really, haven't they?
They weren't partying that hard. Like, it was bring your own booze. So it sounded like a Scottish party, to be honest, where everybody brings their own carry out and sits with it between their legs.
Yeah.
And it's not like in England, people seem to be much more trusting of other people.
They are.
That they're going to bring decent booze and, everybody shares the booze.
Oh, yeah. And to be honest, even under the circumstances, that sounds like a pretty fitting way to spend Christmas anyway. Had they not locked us all down, I would have no issue with them having these sorts of parties. But that was an absolute rave compared to the Christmas that I had, basically spent in front of my blimmin' simulator. So, yeah.
What does it simulate?
What does it simulate? Racing, car racing.
Oh, right,
yeah, I probably shouldn't advertise.
I thought it might be like one of these Japanese sex dolls.
Yeah.
With
Yeah, but yes, the clues were everywhere, really, that the government didn't really believe their own policies. Dominic Cummings, of course, travelled all the way to Durham to spend a slightly better time in lockdown than the first lockdown. And, of course, in June last year, our own health secretary was found cheating on his wife with his political advisor at a time when we were still supposed to be socially distancing.
Neil Ferguson as well, the guy who
really?
advised the doomsday merchant. He's the guy is it UCL? Who has the models that have actually been over-engineered. Everybody that comes in changes the code, and then they can't actually reconstruct them. You put in the same values, get different results each time. But yeah, these models, he's used these models to predict about 15 of the last 2 pandemics. So he's always saying we're all going to die. And he's got a little bit lucky with COVID, but he cheated on his wife, and he cheated with somebody called Antonia Stats. So he was leaving the house during lockdown to go and bone Antonia Stats, and I just thought it was nice because he obviously works in data, and she's called Stats.
See, why is it always the lockdown enthusiasts? It's almost as if they want their families to be locked up so they can do what they like.
It's almost as if they know that it's all nonsense. I knew it's nonsense as well, so I don't know what everybody's complaining about. You should have just been partying as well. I was having dinner parties and all the rest of it. It was great fun, and it was brilliant traveling. I was on 3 continents. I spent first bit of lockdown in Australia, then I came back, then I went to Dubai to do some shows there because it wasn't locked down then. And traveling was great. You got a whole row of seats to yourself on the plane, so every flight was like a first class flight. Traveling on the train was great. It was always empty. So yeah.
This sounds like an absolute blast.
Yeah.
It's a shame that they got to enjoy that, but we of course did not.
I did.
Oh, you did. Well, I'm jealous. But if we fast forward to the most recent Christmas, when in early December, a video featuring the Conservative Party actually preparing their response in advance for when they were accused of having a party under lockdown, party aide Angela Stratton was seen laughing and gloating at the fact that no social distancing measures were even in place. And even after the video emerged, the government still had the front to deny that such a party even happened. Then, of course, it emerged a week or so later, if we get the next one up, please, John, that the then candidate Mayor of London, Sean Bailey, had his own party at Tory HQ, which had been described as particularly raucous. It took place exactly 1 year before the feature was published, the 14th of December. And things got even worse for Boris Johnson shortly after this. If we get the next one up, please, John, as it was revealed that Cabinet Secretary Simon Case removed himself from his role in heading Whitehall's investigation into claims of party being held in Downing Street over the lockdown period, obviously because there's a conflict of interest lying in the fact that the party is supposed to have taken place in his own office. And the inquiry was announced to be finished by Sue Gray, second permanent secretary at the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, who apparently has a strong reputation for conducting vigorous internal investigations. So then there were the photos of the number 10 garden party, which emerged shortly after, which is here, which is believed to have happened under the first lockdown in May 2020. There they are, pictured with cheese and wine, apparently. You can see Boris alongside his wife, up to 17 staff in the garden. Number 10 has continued to insist that this was a work meeting, and Boris has continued to be asked whether he attended the number 10 party, and he has responded either by saying no or ball dancing around the question as he does. Well, it seems like his leadership now is actually at minute to midnight, as he said in his own terms. So if we get to the next clip up here, or the next page, I should say, that in light of a leaked email originally sent to 100 Downing Street staff by the Prime Minister's Principal Private Secretary Martin Reynolds. So this is a leaked email, and if we scroll down, we can actually see it. The email was reportedly titled with the subject line, "Socially Distant Drinks, Official Sensitive number 10 only." Oh dear. So if you've got good eyesight, which I don't, because I've actually had to type it up here, but the email reads...
Spent too long in your simulator.
Yes, I certainly do. And after what has been an incredibly busy period, we thought it would be nice to make the most of the lovely weather and have some socially distanced drinks in the number 10 garden this evening. So please join us from 6 p.m. and bring your own booze. Raucous.
Bring your own booze. That's the worst bit.
Yeah.
That's so like, I mean, it's just so tight. These people are running the country.
I know.
They're working hard to come up with these rules that they then break. So I think the least the government could do is like get them a bottle of Echo Falls.
Or perhaps get David Guetta to perform in the garden. Yeah, at least, it would be a little... There would almost be something less offensive about that, because they're not hiding behind the fact that they have utter contempt for the taxpayers at this point. Yeah. But anyway, unless this is revealed as fake, which I highly doubt, it's pretty much case closed. It seems perfectly clear that these parties did indeed happen. And if we get to the next article up here, eyewitnesses are coming forward to admit that Boris and Carrie were indeed in attendance. Surprise, surprise. The two eyewitnesses have told the BBC that they saw Mr. Johnson and his wife Carrie at the event in the garden. And even staffers at Downing Street were reportedly stunned by the arrogance, with one person saying that the idea was unwise. So others saying, what the hell, and is this for real?
Yeah.
With this considered, it's kind of amazing that this information didn't come out earlier.
Yeah. In fact, it wasn't until Dominic Cummings was fired that all this information started coming out, like the angry ex-girlfriend just throwing everybody under the bus now.
Of course, we've got to thank him for all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to say, like, everybody's like on Twitter being like, oh my God, I couldn't go and visit my like mum in hospital or whatever. And it's like, well, who wants to go and visit an old person in hospital? You should be thanking the government for these lockdown rules that stopped you from going and doing something boring so you could stay in and play in your simulator or something instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was perhaps my excuse for not visiting my nan anyway. But the BBC has been kind enough to compile a list of all the parties that have happened over lockdown. Would you like to see them?
Yeah.
Yes, and they've actually compiled it to, well, in total there are 9, apparently. 9 and counting, because of course I'm pretty sure there were more. But Boris was reportedly in attendance at the... If we scroll down a little bit, we can actually see details of the specific... Yes, here we are. The 15th is the one of interest. 15th of December. So Boris was reportedly in attendance at the party on the 15th of December after featuring in a photograph published by the Sunday Mirror, where he can be observed to be surrounded by aides in tinsel hats. He, of course, denied doing anything wrong, but as we can see, the chickens are really coming home to roost now. And it really is beginning to look like, well, Boris is on the cusp. So yeah, on the 15th, multiple sources have told the BBC that there was a Christmas quiz for number 10 last year, which were going alongside of the tinsel hats being worn. A photo that was where you saw 2 colleagues alongside Mr. Johnson in his seat in cabinet. I mean, if that's not a clue for a Christmas party happening, I do not know what is. We, of course, didn't see them.
Christmas crackers.
Christmas crackers, of course.
Are also a clue.
Yeah. I mean, if there was actually footage of Boris Johnson playing Pass the Parcel, he'd probably...
play that at Christmas?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pass the Parcel?
Yeah, as an adult, yeah.
You play Pass the Parcel as an adult at Christmas?
Yes, we started it as children. And what's actually happened is that we continued the tradition in anticipation that my side of the family would actually have children so that we could play the games for them. But none of us actually did, because as it turns out, we're all incels. so we're actually keeping up the tradition by playing it as adults, of whom I am now one of the youngest.
Right.
So you know when I mean, I know that this is probably an exaggerated or a bad example for suppose conservative thinking, but you could say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a ritual that seems to work. It brings families together, but at the same time, you are kind of an adult playing Pass the Parcel.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, but nonetheless.
What was in the middle of the parcel this year?
A notepad.
Like a note, like the paper?
Yes.
Like a nice one?
Yeah, it was a relatively nice one. Nicer than the ones I normally buy myself, and it had a nice pen in it as well.
Oh, right.
So yeah, so it was still worth playing just for that. But anyway, it is beginning to look like Boris is on the cusp a little bit this time, if we get the Independent article up here. Because before this even happened, on Christmas Day, a poll revealed that a majority of Conservative voters at the last general election want Boris Johnson replaced as party leader and Prime Minister next year. 60% of all voters said they backed the idea of the Conservatives ditching Mr. Johnson. 35% were strongly in support. And in 2019, this figure of those who were from the same poll, who were in favour of Boris Johnson being ditched, was just 53%. Still not a particularly flattering figure for Mr. Johnson, but this was in the midst of Brexit being the absolute S-show that it was, I suppose. And of course, since the news about the email emerged, if we get the next one up here, senior Tories started to tell the PM that they knew that he should know that his own game is beginning to look a little bit up now, or at least he needs to offer some clarification on what he knows. And one of the most scathing in response to the emails leak was the ex-leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Ruth Davidson, who said that Boris should not wait idly for the outcome of the inquiry before he confesses. And Ruth said that the Prime Minister should not wait for the outcome of it before admitting his attendance. This line won't survive 48 hours, she said. Nobody needs an official to tell them that they are at a boozy shindig in their own garden. Yeah. People are rightly furious they sacrifice so much, visiting sick or grieving relatives, funerals. What the F were any of these people thinking? Yes, pretty much. That probably mirrors the attitude of the entire country. Lord Barwell, Theresa May's former Chief of Staff, echoed the sentiment, saying, "Let me put this politely, it is not entirely clear why the Prime Minister needs to wait for Sue Gray's report and find out if he went to a party in his own garden. Basically, Boris, just admit that you misjudged this," is pretty much the message from the Conservatives at the moment. And it's getting worse and worse the more he puts it off. And some have got so fed up with it, if we go on to the next article, that they believe he should actually resign. Should it become, needless to say, obvious that he is lying about everything here. Nigel Mills MP said it would be a resigning matter if he was found to have been at the event. I would say anybody who organised or willingly attended a party at that time, he can't possibly stay in his position. And that's what he said to Times Radio. And he added, "I just can't see how anybody who broke the rules in such a blatant way at the worst possible part of the pandemic can possibly remain in a position to have any influence over COVID policy." And another person who called for Boris's resignation was Douglas Ross, leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Well, not directly, but basically said, look, if this is the case, that Boris is proven to have been disingenuous here, he's got to consider his position. And the same applies to Peter Cardwell, former special advisor to Mr. Johnson, who said the PM must level with the country today and explain whether he attended the drinks events. And you're probably all wondering where Keir Starmer has been in this. And well, we're not going. And this has been his position up to this point, saying that his deflections and distractions are utterly absurd. But of course, we are now at a much more serious point down the line. So I'm going to fast forward in this debate or in this segment to give the update to cover where we actually are now with respect to Prime Minister's questions. So in short, Boris has said, given these revelations that have come out, he's very, very sorry to the people who believe that he attended a Christmas party at 10 Downing Street over the aforementioned Christmas period. He admits that he was in attendance, but it was only for 25 minutes. And it was only for the purpose of showing how much he appreciated all the hard work people had actually done over that time.
Are you allowed to break the COVID rules for 25 minutes?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes, if you're the Prime Minister, and for as long as your sacrosanct judgment warrants that you believed the people working for you to have done a good enough job. Yeah. Yes. So he started with a tribute to Jack Dromey, the Labour MP who died this week, and then he went on to apologise, not very convincingly, saying that many have made extraordinary sacrifices. He knew the rage, why people were angry with him. The government he leads have not perhaps followed the rules as well as they should. And although he cannot anticipate the results of the Sue Gray inquiry, he knows that there are many things he and the government has not got right. He said Downing Street is a bit complex, and that Downing Street is a bit complex. And when we went into the garden, it was all in good faith. It was a work event. He left after 25 minutes, but now he knows he should have ended the event, which of course he didn't seem to have any intention of doing because he looked quite comfortable eating cheese and wine. And Keir Starmer, as you can see here, has now had the spine to call Boris Johnson to resign. This is about an hour after his performance at Prime Minister's Questions, where he said the following. There we have it, the pathetic spectacle of a man who has run out of road. His defence that he did not realise he was at a party is offensive to the British public. Is he now going to do the decent thing and resign? And as for resigning, he doesn't think that Starmer should preempt the Gray inquiry. So, yes, in short, the Keir Starmer has now had the balls to call on Boris Johnson to resign and has said if the PM is so contemptuous of the public that he thinks he can ride this out, he should have the decency just to admit he's got this wrong and not wait for as I've said, the inquiry to come out and say that he's because this is ultimately going to destroy his legacy more than he already has, really.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to be sort of pushed out.
No.
It's Tony Blair left. I mean, maybe that's a bad example. I was going to say with his head held high. It's not so high now, but
yeah.
I mean, at least he left rather than what happened to Thatcher. Getting hoisted out by your own party and crying in the Jaguar on the way. And it's the crazy thing about Boris is he's really managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here because for all that everybody slams the UK government's handling of coronavirus, compared to other countries, they've done relatively well.
Yeah.
So we're in a place now where we can sort of just come out of lockdown, and there aren't really restrictions in England. In the sort of satellite states of the UK, so Scotland and Wales, there are restrictions, but that's because that's devolution's fault. Devolution is a terrible idea, and if you look at other countries like Ireland, they've got they're still very heavily locked down, and they've been heavily locked down. So the UK was doing really well. Boris did relatively well, and he's really managed to just hoof the ball over the crossbar at the last moment.
Yeah, he has. I mean, I'm not sure how you think about this analogy, but with politicians, it's almost exactly the opposite to rock stars, isn't it? With rock stars, it's better to burn out than it is to fade away. With politicians, it's kind of the opposite. So as you say, Tony Blair ended, I would say, what was a pretty scathing legacy on himself. Of course, people feel differently about that.
Yeah.
By stepping aside when he felt the shadows looming over his head, and Gordon Brown basically took the flak for the rest of his legacy for New Labour's for the rest of New Labour's tenure.
Yeah,
Boris Johnson is not doing that. No. He's almost burning out, burning and blowing up in plain sight here.
Yeah. And he's always been quite sort of Teflon. He's had so many scandals and all the rest of it. But he's always weathered them because he's got this popularity. But now he's lost the popularity with. I mean, if 66% of people want him to go, he's lost that popularity. I mean, he did lead the Tories to sort of an unprecedented landslide.
Yeah, but how much can we credit? What was it, Jeremy Corbyn for that as well? Yeah. And the state of the Labour Party in general, its fractured state of which still pertains really under Keir Starmer. If anything, it's arguably even worse because they're still flirting with the same lunatic policies, but just not actually not being able to define what a woman is for a start.
Well, they've lost the sort of the hardcore socialist vote that Jeremy Corbyn had. I think they're actually polling slightly lower than Jeremy Corbyn did, so it's around 36%, is it?
Well, at least with Jeremy Corbyn, you had a proper opposition. As in he actually went for the kill on socialist principles at Prime Minister's Questions and didn't do so very well.
Yeah.
But at least he was presenting a counter argument.
Yeah, the opposition now, Keir Starmer with all the COVID policies, instead of opposing them or questioning them, Keir's can we have more of them? Can we do them a bit harder?
The de facto opposition, in fact, with the Tory backbenchers who said Boris, don't do this or we'll kick you out. It's like the 1922 committee.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think Boris's relationship with them at this point is going to be pretty unsavable.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I'm going to call this and say this is the beginning of the end of Boris Johnson. It does seem as if he's chosen the burnout option rather than the fade away option, as in he's willing basically to let his fate or his legacy be decided at the hands of Susan Gray, who's now leading the inquiry.
Right.
So we're going to have to see how this plays out. It's probably not going to play out very well for him. But yes, I suppose that is very much it until we hear more.
If you want to see more from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to enjoy all of the premium content we have on the site, such as our premium history podcast, Epochs. In this episode, Bo and Carl discuss the legendary Spartan lawgiver Lycurgus. You can get access to all of our premium content with a bronze tier membership for just £5 a month. If you'd like to stay up to date with all of the content we're putting out on the site, you can follow Lotus Eaters on Getter at getter.com. You can also follow our individual writers and presenters, such as Carl here. Thank you and goodbye.